about improving the economy, and this guy is so sick and tired that he bends down, takes off his shoe, and launches the shoe like a missile and hits the president. What was the state of mind of this man? What was the state of mind of this person? Because I assure you, he was not intending, his intention was to hurt the president. Given, if he had a different weapon in his hand, it's the same thing, he would have hurled it at the president. George Ngaira is with me in the studio today. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Fred, for having me.
On Friday,
yes,
we talked about some of the things that have happened in this country that show that people have gotten to a place where they're tired. We highlighted a gentleman who took his life in Njiri from the 7th floor.
Yeah.
And before he jumps, people on the ground are telling him, jump! Whoa, you jump! Angels will catch you somewhere. Jump! And the guy jumps, yes, hits the ground and dies.
Yeah.
And these guys start laughing.
Yeah.
And then there was a police vehicle, I don't know from where. The police officer, the vehicle is overturned.
Yeah.
And people are telling the police woman, unalia nini? And she's trapped. She's asking for help.
Yeah.
And they don't care.
Absolutely.
They just tell them, and there's somebody saying there, oh, ukimuokoa, kesho atachukua risasi, atapiga mtoto wako risasi.
Yeah.
As in, and now this. What do you read?
I think, Fred, first of all, thank you very much for having me, as always. I think the message is now home. The message is now home for the president, for the government, and everybody who has a responsibility to ensure that they perform their duties and serve the people. Fred, I've said it a billion times that the government of Kenya is not an NGO, but actually it's an institution funded by taxpayers' money. People who work extremely very hard to be able to generate the taxes that are able to run this country. Mm-hmm. And therefore, those who have been given an opportunity to serve them must be, at the very least, concerned at what is the true state of the nation, and what are the people thinking in as far as the management of the affairs of the country are concerned.
Yes.
And therefore, as days go by, Kenyans are becoming more and more bold. And they become, because where else can he get the president? For example, yes, the gentleman that took the shoe maybe is angry over an issue.
Yes.
And the president was speaking by the time he was throwing that shoe. And maybe he had listened to the president halfway and he felt like there's absolutely nothing new that's coming from this president. And you know, this is a civilian. And Fred, as a public servant, by the way, civilians have a right to address you in any way because you're operating. President William Ruto's everything is catered for by public servants. Everything that he has, maybe even his vest and every other thing that he's wearing, because that is what the Kenyan people have mandated him to do. And therefore, they have a duty to hold him to account. And for an ordinary civilian like that one in Migori, maybe that was his only opportunity to get the president's attention. We might think he wanted to harm the president, or maybe he was saying, please listen to me, and the president was busy telling him a lot of other stories. It's a picture of what's up, a reflection of what's happening across the country. And I think President President William Ruto and whoever else that is with him has to now pay attention to the people of First the Music.
Because wow, you know, you think it's unthinkable. The security detail around the president, and you know how mean those guys are.
Yeah.
Yet you have that confidence. This guy must have been so frustrated.
Yes.
That a shoe at the
Fred, during the Gen Z demonstrations,
yes,
the young man that made it to parliament and was calling Speaker Wetangula,
yes,
do you think he was out of his mind or he knew what he was doing? He was very sure of what he was doing.
Yes.
It reaches a point in life, Fred, when you've tried again and again and again and things seem not to be working, you get to a situation where you become what you call temporarily insane.
Yes.
So you are able to do some outrageous things which anybody wouldn't be able to manage that. And Fred, there is no human shield that is big enough to shield anybody in the world against such an attack, including this president, in a mammoth crowd like that one. President Trump had the best security in the world, you know, the Secret Service, but they still were able to, he narrowly survived death with that shot that tried to take him out. So this president is no different. There is nothing, Fred, humanly possible that police can do to secure such a situation.
Yes.
Because human beings react in an action. We're talking over 100,000, maybe 1,000, maybe 5,000 people surrounding you. Fred, you only have maybe around 50 to 100 officers that guard the president. So it's very hard to be able to contain such an issue. I think for me, like I've said at the very beginning, is that the message is home for President William Ruto. If he didn't get it with the Gen Z, which was a terrible situation if he never learned, it would be very unfortunate if President William Ruto didn't learn what happened last year. This is a picture of the true feelings of what the average Kenyan is doing. And I hope he draws some lessons from what is happening to him and in the many other trips that he's making.
Do you see his security detail or the way he interacts with the people now changing?
It has to. It has to look into it, because I think by now the NIS, you told me the other day, Francis Atwoli, SG for Court, was telling the president that, you know, things are not okay. Outside here, things are not okay. And so the president, I think, if he didn't get that message, this one is home, that things are not very okay. And he's going to a place where I think in this country currently is the only other place this president is expecting some positive reception because of the so-called broad-based government. And so this is an area that I'm sure he least expected such kind of a resistance. But I'm just happy that Kenyans are waking up to what I've been saying the other day, that there's something called opportunity cost in business, which is the price of, you know, the cost of taking a certain option vis-a-vis the other one. And that I've always said that we need to come to a time when Kenyans can be able to understand the opportunity cost of choosing leaders. And this is the moment where now Kenyans are becoming more bold, they're able to vet their leaders. And if they can hold this president to account, I think they can hold any other person in this country to account. Fred, I've been saying this, that one day I pray for this country, a time will come when we can have a population that is prompt and is able to hold our leaders into account, that we don't need to create any more laws. I've said that the constitution that we have is enough. We don't need any other constitution. It's just to ensure that it's followed. Is what is missing.
We keep on adding new laws.
Actually, the only thing we need to work on is
to cure our disobedience.
Our disobedience, because we have enough laws to run this country. I think what we need to work on is compliance and especially checking a strong presidency. There are three very important bills that have been lined up for a very long time, and I pray in future those should be some of those primary bills that we can work on. Is the referendum bill, the impeachment bill, and the recall bill. Because the recall bill is supposed to check the MPs and the MCAs, so that within a certain time frame, if you feel a certain MCA or an MP is not performing, you're able to actually recall him. And then for the executive, which is the president and the governor, you have the impeachment bill, which then also is able to check the president. But we need to create a different path through which you can be able to check the president, because the current format of impeachment is the one that you only go through parliament. And so when you have a dead parliament like the current one we have, it becomes very hard to be able to raise that. I wish there was and hopefully maybe in future, those are some of the changes we need to make on the impeachment bill, is that there is another path where people can maybe say collect signatures, a public process through which you can be able to impeach a governor and a president, so that you just say you need to collect, say, 10,000 signatures per county, at least 24 counties, and you're able to invoke the IBC to begin the process of impeaching either a governor or a president. And then the third bill is the referendum bill, which again is able to, Kenyans are able to pursue it through, remember we do have a referendum provision in the constitution, but we do not have the specifics of how that process is supposed to go. And so if we can be able to have such stringent bills that can be able to check a powerful president, we would never need to amend our constitution again, because I believe we have enough laws to be able to do that. So President William Ruto has received his message. I think he's now analyzing the message. I pray he learns from the message, so that Kenyans
he must have had a long meeting with himself and with the people around him yesterday. Because these same people who are throwing shoes are the same people that ODM is promising him forth, and telling him that these people will vote for you 2027.
Today, as we speak, Fred, today as we speak, you remember President William Ruto got 7.1 million votes, and 3.4 million votes of those ones came from the mountain,
yes,
leaving him with almost just about 3.5 million, and then at least almost a million shared between Western and Coast. So you realize that his core base as a politician has less than 2 million votes, yes, and therefore he badly needs, in a situation where we have 22.3 million votes, you know, he badly needs a big mover that can be able, yes, to guarantee him some extra vote. Yes. And now that the mountain has moved, yes, this would be the place where this president will be able to bank on something and say, I don't need really to belabor so much. You can see the efforts he's making as far as going to the ground, but also you need to see the cabinet decision. Cabinet has approved the extension of SGR to Kisumu. Cabinet has approved the approval, the parastal, transforming the legendary Russia Hospital, which is now Jaramogi Oginga Hospital, into a state parastatal. Parliament has approved the construction of a new port on Lake Victoria with 2 berths, you know, to be able to actually do logistics. All those are supposed to be incentives to be able to excite the people, yes, of Kisumu to be able to come and to on board. But you see, Fred, I don't think there's any part of this country more than Nyanza that is more aware of our nation. They're the most nationalistic group that has been here for years. Some of them are being told that now that we're in broad-based government, we need to learn how to be in government. We've been in opposition for too long. Something that I partly agree. You know, I've said it a billion times. I'm traumatized being in opposition, and sometimes when you're so much used to a certain life, it becomes a little bit very hard to be able to adjust to a new life where I'm supposed to be government. Even when I'm given some of these larges, yes, I still doubt if they're genuine or I'm being set up. Am I really being set up or not? You understand? Yes. So President William Ruto for sure has to go back on the drawing board and calculate and ask himself, what do I need to do to gain the people? Because if this president does not gain the people, there's no amount of any other infrastructure that can give him the presidency. Because when you look at the presidents, you have almost 7 presidents, Fred, who've actually lost elections in the last maybe 5 or 6 years around Africa. And it's not that they didn't have the military or the intelligence and all those things and the money. Of course, the president, by virtue of being a president, has unlimited resources to campaign because his campaign is paid for by Kenyans. Yes. You know, President William Ruto is going around the country, it's funded for by taxpayers. True. An ordinary competitor would have to fuel his cars and security to go to Migori. He's able to achieve that on his own. And so most of those presidents that you've seen being defeated, President Goodluck Jonathan in Nigeria, and President Mutharika in Malawi. Edgar Lungu in Zambia, all these presidents did not lose willingly. They lost because the people defeated them. And I think this president is coming to a situation where he's actually facing the people are not the politicians, because the politicians are already in his pockets. Parliament, the entire parliament is in his pockets. So he largely is depending on them. The people that he largely now, all the resistance this president is facing is directly from the people.
And it's a very tricky situation.
Yes.
Because once he will have to do maybe 3 times more than Matiang'i.
Yes.
Or 4 times more than Matiang'i.
Yes.
To be able to win the hearts of the people.
Yeah.
Because what does he tell the people he's going to do?
Yes.
Because he already made the promises
yes.
In 2017.
Yes.
And according to the people, he's not achieved.
Yes.
So he's at a very precarious position as we head towards 2027.
Absolutely. And you know, the one thing that Kenyans really are hating right now is this business of eating. You know, yes. Our turn to eat. Kenyans themselves are asking.
It's just ridiculous.
Now that
I listened to Oburu Odinga just said it plainly.
Absolutely. And you can imagine, you know, let me tell you, because I'm a life member of ODM, I have been, now I'm a former life member of ODM, yes. Fred, the oldest party leader in this country
yes.
is the party leader of ODM, Raila Odinga.
Yes.
The oldest senator in this country is the senator of Siaya, Senator Oburu Odinga. The oldest governor in this country is the governor of Kisumu, is 78 years old, is Governor Njiri. It's like ODM has lived in the old mentality. They're unable to understand where the country is today. And the only thing we can do is to send them home fast, so that by the time they realize that we are done with this business of ODM, they can be able to do that. Fred, this is not the party that I've supported for 20 years. It certainly is not the party. This is not the party that even when I was part of a strategic team for the Mheshimiwa Musalia Mudavadi in 2013 when he had the UDF, I refused to continue with that process because I told the people, I do not believe in this candidate. Never mind Musalia Mudavadi is my homeboy. It's because I believed in something that we had in the Orange movement, which was more national. We were saying that we just had devolution, and the only party we are sure can be able to implement devolution was ODM because it stood for it and we fought for it and I voted for it. You understand? And I was more national because I didn't take time to be able to look at my tribesman and follow his way regardless of what he stands for, because I believed he does not represent the journey of where the country wants to go. Because Fred, what we are saying every time is that no Kenyan deserves to be alienated just because of his political opinion. You should not be able to do that. And the devolution came so that we can end that culture. So that we should never, Fred, your second name should never be a reason why Murang'a County should not get a road. You understand? That's why in countries with real structures like the US and the UK, they remain stable and they can have even 5 elections. You know, the UK has had 5 prime ministers. Not even one single post-election violence. Why? Because there's a difference between the politician and delivery of services. And that's what devolution meant to be, because it then guaranteed, you know, with devolution, Fred, there is no Kenyan that can say that he's been marginalized, because every county does receive some bit of funds. And we were supposed to actually entrench that to a level that nobody should be saying that it's our time to eat. Every Kenyan must eat at all times. And I think such old and tired leaders are the ones you need to get rid of. I pray we could do it sooner. But as people that believe in the rule of law, we can then hopefully that at least 10th of August, so that we can be able to deal with such characters, so that we move away from this kind of culture. Fred, the day we fully embrace devolution, me, I'll be talking every week from Kakamega. I'll be inviting you from Kakamega Forest to come and enjoy the tourism. It is now the only tropical forest in East Africa. You can come and do bird hunting and all these kinds of things because of the good infrastructure and the situation in terms of living is concerned there. So this is very unfortunate for the president. I think the president should go back and now prepare to deal with the people. Fred, countries that face what this president has faced, including what happened last year, most times usually are collapsed. This president is lucky to have survived what happened last year. There's no way in a country where people can go and even ban parliament. If there was ever a referendum in this period, it was the Gen Z outcome, the referendum. And now what is coming out after this is now a journey home. So we need to begin to beat this president by. This is his journey home, and we wish him well. We hope that he doesn't come back.
Now, your party, your party is in shambles.
My former party.
Your former party. You see, as a life member, you remain a life member.
By the way,
you can never divorce yourself. You entered into a life covenant with ODM. But what was happening yesterday? Oburu Odinga, Raila's brother, the Junets of this world, were tearing into those people who are against the broad-based government. And they even told indirectly James Orengo, who's leading the camp that is against this, if you don't want, you can go home, leave the party and go. In fact, Oburu said, these people are vomiting on us from within. So it is bare-knuckled now.
Absolutely. Fred, this marks the end of ODM. And if there was never a sign, then this is a sign. I've told people that ODM as a party is owed by government 10 billion shillings. You understand? The register of political party is supposed to have disbursed 10 billion shillings, because ODM is the only party that has existed since the 2010 constitution. And they went to court, and they went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the court made a decision that immediately after 2010, from the financial year 2011 going forward, those parties were actually meant to receive the percentage as it has been allocated by the Constitution.
Yes.
And so when that computation was done, then the government up until today has a pending bill of at least 10 billion shillings. So ODM is an investment for Raila Odinga. It's only madmen who are still thinking that there's anything they can do in ODM. ODM has run its course. And I think
you're saying it's an investment for Odinga.
It's an investment for Odinga. That's the last thing they would want to leave. That's why you can see on this page, the people they've listed here all share the same surname, Fred. You understand?
The people listed.
They listed here, the ones who stand to eat.
Yes.
All share the same surname. They're all members of one family.
Oh, really?
All these are brothers and sisters and
daughters. That's Oburu Odinga?
And this is the sister, and this is the daughter, and this is the nephew. This is a family affair. This eating spree is a personal project for this family. You understand? So it's a personal project for this family. So ODM, where it is now basically a kitchen. It's a kitchen for this family. And I think they are right, by the way, when Oburu Odinga says that it's our turn to eat. We should allow them to eat. But we hopefully we give them a timeline. There's a moment when they'll have to go to the bathroom and also do the necessary after they've done the eating. Yes. So for ODM as a party, Fred, it's a
where is Sifuna? Sifuna has mellowed.
He's mellowed briefly, but Sifuna has never shied away from speaking his mind. Sifuna is a young man. We're just about age mate, so he has a long career ahead of him. And I think, like any other strategic politician, he's rethinking his journey in as far as politics is concerned. And if Sifuna is to learn anything from our long-serving party leader, when Raila Odinga realized that his career was not progressing anymore in Ford Kenya, never mind Ford Kenya was his father's party, and his father was dead, he knew this journey is over. And he didn't even have to wait for the next election. He resigned midway and went back to the by-election and created his own journey. That's what real politicians do. And that's why I pray that Sifuna and many other ODM members who are done with the business of the Orange Dream, like Sifuna and myself, can then begin to see that it's about time that we move on and leave this ship to sink in Lake Victoria where it belongs, so that the rest of us can now proceed with the journey to can proceed with the journey, because Kenya will be here, Fred, 100 years from now.
Yes.
There was Kenya here 100 years before. 1925, Kenya was already a colony. It was a state, and therefore there were people here, and there was a government here. There was a governor here who was in charge of the Kenyan state within the East African framework that the framework the British had, and there will be Kenyans here 100 years from now. So there is every reason for us to plan ahead, so that we don't belabor so much on characters that have truly not been able to be beneficial for our country for a long time. Fred, we are at a time when I truly believe, even as a young person, is that a time has come for us to transition to the next generation of leaders, and that will not come by osmosis or by diffusion. It will come through such processes, and it's a political process. And therefore, those of us who want to see this Kenya beyond the next 10, 20 years, it's about time we move on, and we leave ODM for those ones who want to eat it.
Now, as all this is happening, yes, something else was happening in Wamunyoro.
Yes.
The former Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, had gathered the likes of Fred Matiang'i, Kalonzo Musyoka, Martha Karua, basically name them, Eugene Wamalwa, who I don't think adds any value to this outfit.
Yes.
All these leaders were in Central.
Yes.
And the most interesting thing is what Matiang'i says.
Yes.
And if you look at the Star, if you look at the Star, Star just gave it, it's like they gave it a wide berth.
Yes.
They just mentioned it on that page.
Yes.
Just a little bit, and there is no story on it.
Yes.
Inside.
Yes.
But some of the things that Matiang'i was saying was that if you elect me president, I will restore confidence in the government.
Yes.
That's already a statement he's saying,
yes,
that he's going for the presidency.
Yes.
Right in the presence of the Kalonzo Musyokas of this world.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Fred, of all the people in that group that are purporting to have all the plans within, which are very much within their constitutional rights.
Yes.
to run for presidency.
Yes.
You realize Matiang'i is the least experienced there.
Yes.
And is the least politician there. The others have been there for very years. Kalonzo was there before I was born, and he was already an MP. He's still a leader today.
Yes.
There's nothing to show for 40 years of being in the government, but he wants to promise us something. Only foolish people can be able to buy that. So the only person who can fairly convince people that is a new face, and particularly a population of 70% being under 40, Fred, it means 70% of Kenyans were born after Kalonzo Musyoka was already an MP.
70%.
70% of Kenyans were already were not born.
Yes.
Because by the time Kalonzo Musyoka, for example, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka made it to Parliament in 85, today that child is 40 years old, which is barely where I am. So it means most of us were not born.
When he first went to Parliament.
When he first went to Parliament. So you can imagine, there's nothing to show for all those years. You understand, Fred? Leadership is not a beauty contest, and neither is it a wrestling match that we are looking for looks or weight. We want to see results and what you've done over the years. And particularly this current voter now, we have a very informed voter who is aware of what a leader is supposed to do. That's why you saw young people, Fred, some of them the ages of your daughter, questioning the percentage of tax and tax returns and things like that, and the value of their taxes. They were saying, why are we paying these taxes and yet we are not getting these services? You know, you understand. And these are young people, most of them in their 20s. Most of them were at half the age of the amount of time Kalonzo Musyoka has spent in. So Fred Matiang'i becomes the easiest sell amongst that group. Certainly not Wamnyoro himself. Not Eugene Wamalwa. You know, Wamnyoro and Eugene Wamalwa and Eugene Wamalwa largely falls in the bracket of Wetangula. Sometimes I always say that Governor Natembeya just spares him because it's his party leader. Yes. And otherwise Eugene Wamalwa, just like Musalia Mudavadi, has been in cabinet forever, and there's not even one toilet with a name on him, with his name on it, so he can say that, you know, I built this thing for you people. You understand?
Yes.
There's nothing. You know, President Kibaki in his grave can say, I built Thika Road for you guys. Now you can drive all the way to Kenol. There's something to show for his presidency or his time in office. You understand? And so, and along that Thika Road, he created millionaires all the way. All those property owners that were there had some village land, if you'd call it, and now prime land owners. You understand?
Yes.
Aneka going for not less than 100 million. So Eugene Wamalwa, there's nothing he can show the Western people what he's done over the last 15 years in cabinet, and therefore he falls within that bracket. But I think just because he decided to align here, Fred, my conclusion is that these guys are vultures who've understood that there's a desperate population, there's a desperate young voters who are looking for an option, and they've the person in charge of the country has failed them. They're trying to do every single thing. It's like an old man trying to dye his hair so that he can court a young girl. But you know, something like that. But most of them are vultures who are trying to fill that bracket. But I believe that among them Matiang'i fairly, because he's a fairly newer person, he's not a career politician, and he's been able here and there during his term as a cabinet minister to be able to truly create some policy and transform institutions into working institutions.
What are some of the things that Matiang'i will have to, you know, some of the roadblocks and challenges he will have to overcome if he was to become the president of the country?
Fred, there's something called raw politics.
Raw. Yes.
Raw politics.
Yes.
Now when the real politics that happens in Mashinani, where voters come into voting phase with a certain mindset and the priorities of how they choose their leaders in a country that is also still fairly tribal. Fred, it depends with who comes on the ballot and who the competitors are.
Let's assume you have Matiang'i, you'll obviously have
So let's assume we have President William Ruto. And for ODM survival, you know, President Raila Odinga does not need to directly aid William Ruto, does not have to support President William Ruto directly for him to win an election. He can also run to be able to split the votes, then have a post-election agreement. So remember ODM, then it means, because if ODM does not go on the ballot, it would hardly make even 20 MPs. In this election, ODM only got 50 MPs. Out of 384 seats.
What?
You understand? 290 constituencies, ODM only managed 50 seats. And then a few nominated seats here in the Senate and in Parliament and a few senators is what brings its total number to 86.
Yes.
In the National Assembly, they have 86 representatives. But then in there, you have around 10 or so who are nominated.
Yes.
You know, those who are senators and those who are members of parliament. That leads it to the around 70 something, around 70. And then you have those ones who are women representatives and the senators, who then top up around 10 or 20. So from the 290 constituencies, ODM was only able to manage 50%. And 50 members of parliament out of 290 constituencies. Fred is just about 20% of the parliament.
Yes.
So out of, if Raila Odinga was on the ballot and could only manage 20%, 20 to 25 members of percent, actually just 20% of the members of parliament, because 290 constituencies, you need 145 to be able to hit 50%. So with just 20-30 MPs, it means only manage 25%, and Raila Odinga was on the ballot. You tell me a situation where ODM is not on the ballot.
What?
They would hardly make it even 10%.
People wouldn't vote.
Absolutely.
So Raila Odinga or somebody from ODM has to compete in the election.
Has to compete so that the party is mainstream and is on the ballot. Because if it's not on the ballot, Fred, remember, I told you here some time back that Raila Odinga got 6.9 million votes.
Yes.
1 million votes were from Mulema there. That's 5.9 if you minus it.
Yes.
2 million votes came from Ukambani. If you minus from 5.9, it remains with 3.9. Another 2 million votes came from Ingo, which leaves him with just about 1.9 million votes.
Yes.
Those are his actual votes, because these other guys have other plans. You know, I've told you we have other plans. You understand? So you can imagine what it means going to the ballot. And that 1.9 would have been the Nyanza vote. Nyanza itself with Matiang'i is now a split story. It's like the case is closed.
Kisii
and Kuria.
Yes.
For the first time, I told you the other day, I saw an event where leaders were calling themselves that Kisii and Kuria leaders have met. I'd never seen something like that. That is purely or outrightly dividing the Nyanza vote.
Yes.
It leaves him with just about 1 million votes. You can imagine what happens if he doesn't show up on the ballot. That vote, not everybody would be motivated to show up. So you might end up with just about, because Kisumu County has 5 constituencies. Those are just 5 MPs. Siaya has 5. Homa Bay has 5. Those are 15 MPs.
Yes.
And then Migori has 7. No, I'm talking of Luo Nyanza.
Yes,
I'm talking of Nyanza, Nyanza region. Migori has 7, but 2 of them are Kuria East and Kuria West.
Yes.
So he only remains with 5. That means the maximum, if ODM is to get 100%, is 20 MPs in the whole of Nyanza.
That would severely dent his influence and the party.
Absolutely, and remember, even as we speak, in Kisumu Town East, the member of parliament is not from ODM. Shakil Shabir is an independent member of parliament. Kisumu Town West has for a very long time been electing Olago Luoch on Ford Kenya.
Yes.
In Siaya, the MP for Ugenya, David Ocheng, has been elected now twice on his party MDG against ODM opponents.
Yes.
With Raila Odinga on the ballot.
Yes.
Now you can imagine a situation where he's not even on the ballot.
Be a white
so even the 20 MPs is not a clear shot.
Yes.
It's absolutely not a clear shot. And Fred, I am waiting for this. That's why I kept telling you that we are waiting for this by-election. We now have 2 constituencies which will go to ballot in this by-election. If ODM does not retain those seats, then the message is home.
And that's a very, very serious message.
It is a very serious message, and I pray that is how it ends. So that Kenya can transition. Kenya can transition. It's the only prayer that I'm having lately.
Yes.
I pray that these leaders can learn a lesson from the people. Because, Fred, if you're a father, and you have kids, and your son exercises his constitutional right to go and express himself, and you see on live TV his brains being blown up, and you go back and support the person who was coast led into that situation. It's just not fair. Absolutely, it's not fair. And that's why ODM has to go, so that Kenya can open up its eyes, the rest of Kenya, because President William Ruto has his base for a long time. He's trying to inherit the new base that is ODM, but thank God for the big brains that we have. Atayonea kwa visasa.
So, what are some of the things we should expect to happen this week?
For Fred Matiang'i, obviously, he is becoming the de facto face of this campaign. And you had asked me something, and I think I missed it a little bit. You asked me what are the obstacles that Matiang'i is going to face. Obviously, Kenya is a very ethnic, it's still largely a very ethnic-based political space. even in the great US of Fred, identity politics never leaves. You're able to see, say,
Yes,
blacks and Latinos, these are Democrats.
Yes.
Pure whites, these are Republicans. And it's the nature of life, Fred.
Yes.
It's how you identify each other. That's why when you're outside there and you're alone somewhere outside Kenya and you hear somebody speaking Swahili, you very easily connect that this is my homeboy or this is somebody from home, and you can there's that attachment. So is the case even here. And so unfortunately Matiang'i is a minority in many ways. He comes from a very small community that can hardly give him 500,000 votes.
Yes.
So you can imagine what it means taking Matiang'i and mounting him on other big communities that can compete if they have candidates.
Yes.
And so therefore he has a challenge of being that he comes from a minority. On the issue of funds, maybe political funds in terms of logistics and campaigning. Fred, there's something else. You can be a candidate, but you need to reach out to the people, because majority of Kenyans live in the rural areas.
Yes.
90% of Kenyans don't live in the city, they live in the rural areas. So he must also reach out to the people. There are people in the village there, Fred, I saw. That's why I always insist on mashinani, because I might be a Westerner.
Yes.
And you might in your blanket arrangement conclude that Western is the stronghold of this coalition that Matiang'i is building. But Fred can come from Murang'a and walk into my homestead at a personal level and sell more to me than the person that I'm seeing on TV.
True.
And I might end up voting for him because of the personal appeal. So Matiang'i has a duty to actually campaign and become a real politician, which is a bigger task, because Kisii can vote for him, but Kisii is just about, the entire Kisii vote is what my constituency has. You understand? I come from, in my Malava constituency, you have almost 400,000 people.
Yes.
And that is the number of votes that Matiang'i can be able to raise from his entire community. That means Kakamega County alone, which has 1.5 million adults, can cover everything that Matiang'i can bring on the table. That means I can go on that table and be able to compete if I can deliver. Because today, this year, the population of Kakamega County is 2.7 million. And every year we have about 50,000 children being born. And then another 50,000 migrants coming in. Those who are coming to school, the universities and things like that. Those who are seeking business opportunities.
Yes.
So there's a migrant population of 50,000. So the population is adding by 100,000.
Yes.
That means this year we'll turn to 2.8, next year 2.9, then God willing 2027, we'll have at least 3 million people in Kakamega. With the almost 60% of them will be over 18. That means Kakamega County can deliver 1.5 million votes. That alone can make me a principal in this thing called in this coalition. Yes. And it diffuses everything that Matiang'i is bringing on the table. So he has to do something else to be able to do that. So he needs to work on his political skills, be able to travel and work hard. I always tell you, Fred, that I can give you even the budget here on the table to travel. But traveling itself is a different story. Because to be able to cover 300 constituencies in just under 2 years, it means you must be in 3 constituencies every week.
In 3 constituencies? Absolutely,
because I've said many times, from July this year to August 2010 is exactly 100 weeks. And so if you have 300 constituencies to cover, it means every single week you must cover 3 constituencies to be able to do that. That means back to back all the way. So there's no time for anybody that wants to be anything around the presidency. There's no more time to be able to nine. So Matiang'i must now hit the road so that he can be able to know that. Because he's a new player, Fred. There are some people somewhere in Marsabit there in the middle of Chalbi Desert.
They've never heard of him.
They've never heard of him. Yes. They are not Alan and these other ones here who are on TikTok. Yes. That know Matiang'i. There are other people there, they need to be reached to where you have to drive and be able to access such places. So he has quite a Herculean task to be able to do that.
All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, George. With that, I think we bring the curtains down on the show.
Yes.
Let's see what plays out in the course of this week, how Matiang'i does his thing, what the president is going to do, and how the 3 individuals who are arrested after throwing the shoe are going to, we see how that develops. Today, the leaders are definitely going to do a lot of PR over this, because when a shoe is thrown at
I'm sure there are celebrations on TikTok.
Team.
They're for sure celebrating.
Yeah. So let's see how that's going to play out. Remember, at around 11:30, you're going to have Gatuzi, and then at 2, you have the scorecard, looking at sports and what's happening in the country. Right? Do have yourself a lovely morning. Wacha nikakunywe chai bana.